Welcome everybody from Sparx Systems YouTube channel. It's great to have you join us today as we continue exploring our urban parking system. My name's Scott Hebbard and I'm joined by Stephen Maguire today. And welcome Stephen. I understand that we're going to be having a look at a conversation diagram that's part of the BPMN model. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd be delighted to, Scott, and thank you for the introduction. Yes, you and I are having a conversation, but we can also model conversations between participants using a BPMN, a business process model and notation conversation diagram. So let's dive into this and have a look. The conversation diagram is, if you like, it presents a sort of a graphical representation of the interaction between participants, so the messages that are exchanged between the participants. It's a little bit similar to a collaboration diagram, but a slightly different focus or representation. So as always, I'm going to set my perspective. Up in the top right-hand corner of the application, we have a drop-down which lists the perspective sets, so groups of perspectives, and that makes it very easy to find your way around. I know I'm doing some business modeling, and let's have a look here. I've got a number of different perspectives, and the one I want is BPMN, the business process model and notation. So I'm going to select that one, and Enterprise Architect has now set the focus for my work. It's brought up a builders page, which provides a number of patterns or pre-built models that you can inject into your own repositories. Let's have a very quick look at that. We've got a number of different things there, a process diagram, we've got participants diagrams, and we've got collaboration diagrams. So let's make a start. We need to find a location, as always, for our model in the project browser. So we navigate looking at the urban parking system, and we have a node, a package called business models. And let's have a look at that. We've got a couple of different nodes in there. We've got a BPMN2 participant choreography, and let's put in another package here. So we'll create a package using the little icon in the project browser toolbar. Click on that one and let's drop a name in that. So conversation, diagram, city council, and the parking provider. So we'll go OK to that. And the package has been created, and I'll create a diagram now. So we want to call it a conversation diagram. That's the one we selected. The name defaults to the package name, which is very convenient. And all I do is press the create diagram. I get presented with an option to be able to either create the conversation model inside an element or to just create the elements directly inside that package. Always good practice, Scott, to take that default offering, and we'll do that. Yeah. So what that's done now is it's created the conversation model and also created a diagram with the same name. And you can see here that the diagram canvas is blank and ready for us to start our work. And the toolbox has been conveniently changed to BPMN 2.0 conversation elements and connectors or relationships. And we also have the BPMN types there. That's probably the subject of a more advanced video, but let's have a look and see whether we're going to use that in today's model. And I think we might use some of the elements that are in that model, in that toolbox page. So let's make a start. And the first thing that we need to do in this diagram is, in fact, to create some participants. A conversation occurs between a number of participants. In our case, we're going to have 2 participants. And so let's have a look at and see whether we've got those. In our main toolbox, we don't. But the BPMN types are useful ones that you can use across a number of different types of BPMN diagrams. And if you look there, you can see that there is actually a participant. So let's drag that from the toolbox and drop it onto our diagram. And we'll put it approximately there. And let's call this the city council. They're kind of the main player or the main participant. So let's put them there. And as always, Scott, people that have been looking at the videos will be aware of the fact that I'm very particular about putting notes into these elements. So I'll drop some notes in there about that particular participant. So the municipal governing body responsible for urban infrastructure and public service management. So that's them. So we need another participant. We can't have a conversation unless we're talking to ourselves. without another participant. So let's put another participant in here, and let's put it roughly over here, and let's call it the parking provider. So this is the organisation that's going to provide services to the council. And again, let's drop some notes into this one, and we'll say that the parking provider is a specialised service provider with an expertise in implementing and operating modern parking management systems. So we can use our quick alignment tools there. And the next thing to do is to put in a conversation. So we have an actual element called conversation there. So let's drag that in the toolbox, and let's call that conversation. Let's call it parking initiative request. Let's call it parking initiative request for proposal to operation. So, okay, so not exactly sure how the conversation is going to go, but let's give us that title. And as always with Enterprise Architect, if we need to, we can go back and change that. Let's create a message between and let's create a conversation link to. And let's do that the reverse way here and put that in conversation link to. So you can see this thick line that's come in. That isn't something that I've made up or Enterprise Architect developers, product managers have made up. It comes from the business process model and notation definition. And so we've got that there. And we can have a look at those two participants and the conversation that's going between them. Now, Scott, if that was the only thing that we did, it would seem like a pretty trivial kind of diagram, right?
Yes.
We're just saying that these two parties, these two participants had a conversation, but we don't know.
But what are they going to say?
What are they going to say?
How are they
what
going to exchange information?
Yeah, what are the messages that are going between them? So a very simple answer to that, and something that we kind of do regularly with all types of models, and it's available pretty much across the board with many elements in any of the Enterprise Architect models. I can right mouse click on this conversation element here and say new child diagram, and I can say select a composite diagram. Well, I don't have one yet because I don't know what's in the conversation. If I did, I could select that, but I want to be able to create a new one. I'll say composite structure diagram and create that. You notice now that a couple of things have changed. One of them is that there's a little plus sign there indicating that I can click on that and go down a level. And also there's another little icon here showing me that I can look at the diagram. Now, lo and behold, I need to describe that conversation. Nothing in it yet. So let's click through though onto that diagram, and let's have a look at the type of diagram it is. I'm going to change this to being, it's defaulted to a collaboration diagram, which is one of the options. We could describe that as a collaboration, but I want to change it into a conversation diagram. So I'm going to use this option here on the design ribbon, and it's the diagram panel. So we go to the ribbon, the panel, and then the item, which is options. And I'm going to say change type. And a little dialog box pops up. That's actually popped up on my other monitor. So I'll drag it over here, and we can see that we could set any type. I could actually make it into a type from any of the other technologies that we've got. It doesn't have to be a choreography diagram. It might be something else. It doesn't have to be a collaboration diagram, but we want it to be a conversation diagram. So let's change that, that type, and in it goes. So now we have got the opportunity of starting to describe this conversation, this elusive conversation between the council and the provider. As always, Scott, we want to reuse elements that we've already created. And that's not just that I created them a few minutes ago, but they may be created by myself, last week or even, last year, or they may have been created by one of my colleagues or someone else that's contributing to the model. So if we look in the project browser, we can see that we have got the city council and the parking provider as participants. So let's just drag those onto the palette, and we could do it. Let me show you how to do it as at the same time, Scott. I can grab both of them. I just find some people don't realize that you can do this in in EA. I wanted to go slowly, but this will show people another way of doing this. So drag them both on. I say select for all, and I want them to come in as a link. So I'll just go OK to that. And now you can see that the two elements have popped in. So I'm going to put them here and line them up a little bit there. So always very, very easy to do that alignment. You can see that.
Yeah, the blue lines make it easy to see where the top and the bottom and to center things. So.
Yeah, so incredibly useful. Let's multi-select these elements and let's use the control and arrow key to make them a little bit longer. The conversation is going to occur across between the two of them, and there's going to be a number of different messages that are going to flow there. I'm going to make them slightly bigger. That should be pretty much right, I think. It's a good kind of starting point. You can always change it as you move along. So what's the first message that's going to go between these two participants? Well, the whole thing was about a proposal. We saw that from the title. So let's get a message flow, and a message flow is something that occurs between participants across pools, if you like, in an activity or a business process diagram. So let's use the message flow and drag it from the City Council to the parking provider. EA defaults to that mid position. Let's move that up a little bit. We can give it a name. And again, people often just put these messages in, but I, as always, like to describe the message and what's happening there. So I'll put in some description of that message. Comprehensive document detailing the city's requirement for that thing. So for the parking meter system. So I'll leave that there. Just center that a little bit.
But you sort of need the notes because someone might come a few months later and go, request for proposal. What proposal are you talking about? So
yeah, exactly right. So now we have, something else going on here, which is the response from the council, and we can select that message flow again and make the direction go the other way. Move that up a little bit so it's aligned there. Put in the message, and let's again put in some notes that are going to describe what's going on. They aren't always necessary, the notes, Scott, but I just have a force of habit now to put them in all the time, even if it's a relatively simple statement there. Yep. So very easy to move these messages around. I can change the order of them if I want. So that's a very powerful feature, but this is the order that they're occurring in. A little bit of space there. So
does the order help provide some temporal information? So from top to bottom, request happens first, then submit, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Scott. It is exactly describing the temporal order of these. So it's like a timeline of how the messages are working, where they're going, and that will help people understand the nature of what this interaction or this conversation is about. So it goes on. We put another message flow in here, and we give it another name, and we're going to award the contract. So that's what the council's doing. They're going to award that contract, and once again, we're going to put some notes in and describe what's happening there. So that's the the important or salient points about creating this diagram. So what I'm going to do, Scott, is I'm going to finish off the diagram, but I'll get you to do some of your time travel magic, and I'll see you back in just a few seconds.
Sounds good. Welcome back, Stephen. I've performed a little bit of editing and time travel magic, and we now have our completed conversation diagram between the City Council and the parking provider. I can see lots of requests going back and forth. I can tell what order those proposals and contracts occur in. So quite a lot of detail there, and a lot of information about the interactions between these participants.
Yeah, very good, Scott. Thank you for that. Yeah, I finished off the diagram, and it goes from that request proposal to confirming the schedule. It could go for longer. We could set up a different conversation as we moved into an operational or even a testing state before we reach operations. So we could describe those messages that are flowing as part of the conversation. If you look at the tab, the diagram tab at the top of this diagram, so up here above the diagram itself, there are a number of tabs there, and our diagram's in a tab. You can see that there's a little left arrow, which is like a backtrack arrow. And if I press that, you'll see that I get back to the diagram that I started with, which was when we started this conversation, to use a pun, Scott, we were talking about the participants that were involved, and we modeled the conversation just as this hexagon here that is part of the language specification, and we can drill down into that conversation there. Scott, I just want to show you something which I think is a very useful tool. A lot of people don't seem to know it's here, and I think it's an incredibly useful thing. So if we go to our layout ribbon, so we've got our ribbon interface across the top, we're selecting the layout ribbon, and we've got a helpers panel. And what I can do is click on the little option here to highlight connectors associated with the selected element. So the little tooltip gives you the idea of what it's about. I'll select it. Nothing happens yet, but watch what happens when I select the City Council. I can see the messages that are outgoing from the council. So the messages or the part of the conversation that they're having, so what they're saying, and I can see the response from the parking provider. And if I were to change my focus and select the parking provider, I can see that their responses, the messages or the things that they're initiating as well. So quite a powerful little trick. That works on any diagram. It doesn't matter which diagram it is. That will always show you incoming and outgoing connectors if they have been defined or a part of the language. So once again, Scott, just the take-home message with this is a lot of people that start doing work with what might broadly be described, business processes, people will often jump into a business process diagram, the kind of diagram that looks a little bit like a flow chart. And we'll have a look at that in a subsequent video. And they are very, very useful diagrams, but it is quite often a good point to start with one of these types of diagrams. We've looked at an earlier diagram where we looked at a choreography diagram, and now we've looked at the conversation diagram. Similar kind of idea, messages flowing between participants, but a slightly different focus. But both diagrams, this one, and if you haven't watched that video, then I suggest you go and look at that, but it will just open that one up as well. So that's a choreography diagram. Again, it's talking about participants and the messages, but a very different representation, if you like. And it's useful to be able to look at both ways of representing the messages that are flowing between two participants. So a very useful diagram to kick off the process of understanding what's happening between participants in a business interaction.
That's fantastic. I assume we have two participants on this particular diagram, but is it possible to have more than two participants on a diagram like this, having a conversation?
Absolutely, Scott. We can have multiple participants in this model. So we can drag another participant in, and the parking provider might be talking, have conversations with some sort of infrastructure company that's providing services to the council. The council might have conversations with, the state government level, if there are states in your jurisdictions, or at a federal level. So lots of opportunity there to explore those different interactions between multiple participants.
Excellent. Well, thank you once again, Stephen, for showing us how to create a conversation diagram in Enterprise Architect and setting up some of the fundamentals that you'll use in the business process modeling and notation kind of framework. It's really powerful, and I can imagine that there are many businesses out there that would be interested in using some of these business processes to improve their businesses and how they interact, and modeling to understand how things work. As always, we encourage our audience to like, comment, and subscribe on all of our YouTube videos. We love your feedback. We love hearing from you. We love hearing about potential future videos that you would like to see, and we like hearing your questions. As always, if you're running a project and you're looking at implementing some business process models, or you want some enterprise architect expertise, please reach out to Stephen using his credentials, his LinkedIn details in the comments below and in the description of the video. As always, thank you very much for your expertise and for showing us how easy it is to create a conversation diagram in Enterprise Architect. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. As always, we've just scratched the surface of the tool's capabilities, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos.